Creedence Clearwater Revival was an American rock band active in the late 1960s and early 1970s. The band consisted of lead vocalist, lead guitarist, and primary songwriter John Fogerty, rhythm guitarist Tom Fogerty, bassist Stu Cook and drummer Doug Clifford. Their musical style encompassed the roots rock, swamp rock, and blues rock genres. Despite their San Francisco Bay Area origins, they portrayed a Southern rock style, with lyrics about bass, catfish, the Mississippi River, and other popular elements of Southern U.S. iconography, as well as political and socially conscious lyrics about topics including the Vietnam War. Creedence Clearwater Revival's music is still a staple of U.S. radio airplay. The band has sold 26 million albums in the United States alone. Creedence Clearwater Revival was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1993. Rolling Stone ranked the band 82nd on its list of the 100 greatest artists of all time. Their musical influence can be heard in many genres, including Southern rock, grunge, roots rock, and blues. History: The Blue Velvets, The Golliwogs. 1959 to 1967. John Fogerty, Doug Clifford, and Stu Cook met at Portola Junior High School in El Cerrito, California. Calling themselves the Blue Velvets, the trio began playing instrumentals and jukebox standards, as well as backing Fogerty's older brother Tom at live gigs and in the recording studio. Tom soon joined the band, and in 1964 they signed with Fantasy Records, an independent jazz label in San Francisco that had released Cast Your Fate to the Wind, a national hit for jazz pianist Vince Guaraldi. The record's success was the subject of a national educational television special, which prompted budding songwriter John Fogerty to contact the label. Band roles changed during this period. Stu Cook switched from piano to bass guitar and Tom Fogerty from lead vocals to rhythm guitar. John became the band's lead vocalist and primary songwriter. In Tom Fogerty's words, "I could sing, but John had a sound." Early success: 1967, 1968. In 1966, the group suffered a setback when John Fogerty and Doug Clifford, having received draft notices, enlisted in the military. Fogerty joined the Army Reserve while Clifford joined the United States Coast Guard Reserve. Having never liked the Golliwogs, in part because of the racial charge of the name, the four readily agreed. Zantz and the band agreed to come up with 10 suggestions each, but he enthusiastically agreed to their first, Creedence Clearwater Revival, which they took in January 1968. According to interviews with band members 20 years later, the name's 3 elements come from the following sources: Tom Fogerty's friend Creedence Newball, whose name they changed to form the word Creedence, a television commercial for Olympia Beer, and the 4 members' renewed commitment to their band. Rejected contenders for the band's name included Muddy Rabbit, Gossamer Womp, and Creedence Newball and the Ruby. But the last was the start that led to their finalized name. Finally, John put together the 3 names and we surrendered to the inevitable. Stu laughed. Ed. A name weirder than Buffalo Springfield, Oregon Jefferson Airplane. By 1968, John Fogerty and Doug Clifford had been discharged from military service, and all 4 members had quit their jobs to begin an intense schedule of rehearsing and playing full-time at clubs and radio programmers around the USA. A remake of a 1956 song by rockabilly singer Dale Hawkins, "Susie Q," was the band's second single, its first to reach the top 40. It would be CCR's only top 40 hit not written by John Fogerty. 2 other singles from the debut were released: a cover of Screamin' Jay Hawkins' "I Put a Spell on You," and "Porterville," written during Fogerty's time in the Army Reserve. Peak success: 1,969, 1,970. After their breakthrough, CCR began touring and started work on their second album, Bayou Country, at RCA Studios in Los Angeles. a No. 7 platinum hit. The record was their first in a string of hit albums and singles that continued uninterrupted for 3 years. The single, Proud Mary, backed with Born on the Bayou, reached No. 2 on the national Billboard chart. The former would eventually become the group's most covered song, with some 100 cover versions by other artists to date, including a hit version in 1971 by Ike and Tina Turner. John Fogerty cites this song as being the result of high spirits on gaining his discharge from the Army Reserve. Weeks later, in March 1969, Bad Moon Rising, backed with Lordi, was released and peaked at No. 2. In the United Kingdom, Bad Moon Rising spent 3 weeks at number 1 on the UK singles chart during September and October 1969, becoming the band's only number 1 single in the UK. The band's third album, Green River, followed in August 1969 and went gold along with the single, Green River, which again reached No. 2 on the Billboard charts. The B-side of Green River, Commotion, peaked at No. 30 and the band's emphasis on remakes of their old favorites continued with Nighttime is the Right Time. CCR continued to tour incessantly with performances at the Atlanta Pop Festival and Woodstock. Their set was not included in the Woodstock film or soundtrack because John Fogerty felt the band's performance was subpar. Stu Cook, however, held an opposing view, saying, "The performance is a classic CCR and I'm still amazed by the number of people who don't even know we were one of the headliners at Woodstock." 69. John Fogerty later complained the previous band, The Grateful Dead, put the audience to sleep. As John scanned the audience he saw if Dante scene, just bodies from hell, all intertwined and asleep, covered with mud. Creedence Clearwater Revival, which disbanded in 1972, were progressive and anachronistic at the same time. An unapologetic throwback to the golden era of rock and roll, they broke ranks with their peers on the progressive, psychedelic San Francisco scene. Their approach was basic and uncompromising, holding true to the band members' working-class origins. The term, roots rock, had not yet been invented when Creedence came along, but in a real way they defined it, drawing inspiration from the likes of Little Richard, Hank Williams, Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, and the artisans of soul at Motown and Stax. In so doing, Creedence Clearwater Revival became the standard-bearers and foremost celebrants of homegrown American music, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. After Woodstock, CCR was busy honing material for a fourth album, Willie and the Poor Boys, released in November 1969. Down on the Corner and Fortunate Son climbed to No. 3 and No. 14, respectively, by year's end. The album was CCR in its standard form, featuring Fogerty originals and 2 reworked Lead Belly covers, Cotton Fields, and Midnight Special. Both of the latter songs had also been performed by actor Harry Dean Stanton in the movie Cool Hand Luke, suggesting a subtle nonconformist theme to an apparently tradition-oriented album. The year 1969 had been a remarkable chart year for the band. 3 top 10 albums, 4 hit singles with 3 additional charting B-sides. On November 16, 1969, they performed Fortunate Son and Down on the Corner on The Ed Sullivan Show. CCR released another 2-sided hit, Travelin' Band, Who'll Stop the Rain, in January 1970. Except for Elvis Presley and the Beatles, Creedence had more success with 2-sided hit singles than any band up to that point in time. John Fogerty has said that the flip side was inspired by the band's experience at Woodstock. The speedy, travelin' band, with a strong Little Richard sound, however, bore enough similarities to Good Golly, Miss Molloy to warrant a lawsuit by the song's publisher. It was eventually settled out of court. The song ultimately topped out at No. 2. The band also recorded its January 31, 1970, live performance at the Oakland Coliseum Arena, which would later be marketed as a live album and television special. In February, CCR was featured on the cover of Rolling Stone, although only John Fogerty was interviewed in the accompanying article. In April 1970, CCR was set to begin its first European tour. To support the upcoming live dates, Fogerty wrote "Up Around the Bend" and "Run Through the Jungle." The single reached No. 4 that spring. The band returned to Wally Heider's San Francisco studio in June to record Cosmos Factory. The title was an in-joke about their various rehearsal facilities and factory work ethic over the years. The album contained the earlier top 10 hits, Travelin', Band, and Up Around the Bend, plus highly popular album tracks such as the opener, Ramble, Tamble. Cosmos Factory was released in July 1970, along with the band's fifth and final No. 2 national hit, Lookin' Out My Back Door, Long As I Can See the Light. Although they topped some international charts and local radio countdowns, CCR never had a No. 1 Billboard Hot 100 hit. Their 5 No. 2 singles were exceeded only by Elvis Presley and Madonna with 6 each and tied with the Carpenters. CCR also has the odd distinction of having the most No. 2 singles on the Billboard charts without ever having had a No. 1. Curiously, on WLS, the band had 3 No. 1, 4 No. 3, 2 No. 4, but no No. 2 singles, with Down on the Corner, the only CCR single registering the same peak position on the Hot 100 and WLS. Other cuts on the Cosmos Factory album included an 11-minute jam of the 1968 Marvin Gaye I Heard It Through the Grapevine, and a nearly note-for-note homage to Roy Orbison's Ooby Dooby. The album was CCR's bestseller and went to No. 1 on the Billboard 200 album charts and No. 11 on Billboard's Soul Albums chart. Decline and breakup. 1970 to 1972, the Cosmos Factory sessions had seen the stirrings of tensions within the foursome as the incessant touring and heavy recording schedules took their toll. John Fogerty had taken complete control of the group in matters of both business and artistic output, to the chagrin of Tom Fogerty, Cook, and Clifford. Fogerty resisted, feeling that a democratic process would threaten their success. Other issues included Fogerty's decision at a 1970 Nebraska gig that the band would no longer give encores at its live shows. Pendulum, released in December 1970, was another top seller, spawning a top 10 hit with Have You Ever Seen the Rain? John Fogerty included Hammond B3 organ on many of the Pendulum tracks, notably, Have You Ever Seen the Rain? In recognition of the deep respect and influence of Booker T and the MGs, with whom the members of the band had jammed. The single's flip side, Hey Tonight, was also a hit. Tom Fogerty decided he had had enough of his younger brother and resigned from CCR in late 1970 during the recording of Pendulum. His departure was made public the following February. At first, the remaining members considered replacing Tom but ultimately continued as a trio. Tom Fogerty later stated on an Australian television broadcast that no new member could endure being in CCR. In spring 1971, John Fogerty did an about-face and informed Cook and Clifford that CCR would continue only by adopting a democratic approach. Each member would now write and perform his own material. Fogerty also would contribute only rhythm guitar to his bandmates' songs. Cook and Clifford, who had wanted more input in CCR's artistic and business decisions, resisted this arrangement. Fogerty insisted they accept the new arrangement, or he would quit the band. Despite the dissension, the trio put its new work ethic to the test in the studio, releasing the top 10 single, Sweet Hitchhiker, in July 1971. Back with Stu Cook's Door to Door, the band toured both the U.S. and Europe that summer and autumn, with Cook's song a part of the live set. In spite of their continuing commercial success, however, relations among the three had become increasingly strained. The band's final album, Mardi Gras, was released in April 1972, featuring songs written by Fogerty, Cook, and Clifford and a cover of Hello Mary Lou. The album was a critical failure, with Rolling Stone reviewer John Landau deeming it the worst album I have ever heard from a major rock band. The sales of Mardi Gras were weaker than previous albums, ultimately peaking at No. 12. Fogerty's Someday Never Comes Back with Clifford's Tearin' Up the Country also cracked the U.S. Top 40. By this point, Fogerty was not only at direct odds with his bandmates, but had also come to see the group's relationship with Fantasy Records as onerous. Feeling that label owner Saul Zaentz had reneged on his promise to give the band a better contract, Cook, who held a degree in business, claimed that because of poor judgment on Fogerty's part, CCR had to abide by the worst record deal of any major U.S. recording artist. Despite the relatively poor reception of Mardi Gras and deteriorated relationships among the remaining band members, CCR embarked upon a 2-month, 20-date U.S. tour. However, on October 16, 1972, less than 6 months after the tour ended, Fantasy Records and the band officially announced the disbanding of CCR. The band never formally reunited after the breakup, although Cook and Clifford eventually started the band Creedence Clearwater Revisited. John Fogerty later commented on the demise of CCR in a 1997 Swedish magazine. "I was alone when I made that Creedence music. I was alone when I made the arrangements. I was alone when I added background vocals, guitars and some other stuff. I was alone when I produced and mixed the albums. The other guys showed up only for rehearsals and the days we made the actual recordings. For me, Creedence was like sitting on a time bomb. We'd had decent successes with our cover of Susie Q, and with the first album. When we went into the studio to cut Proud Mary, it was the first time we were in a real Hollywood studio, RCA's Los Angeles studio, and the problems started immediately. The other guys in the band insisted on writing songs for the new album, they had opinions on the arrangements, they wanted to sing. They went as far as adding background vocals to Proud Mary, and it sounded awful. They used tambourines, and it sounded no better. That's when I understood I had a choice to make. At that point in time we were just a one-hit wonder, and Susie Q hadn't really been that big a hit. Either this, the new album, would be a success, something really big, or we might as well start working at the car wash again. There was a big row. We went to an Italian restaurant and I remember that I very clearly told the others that I for one didn't want to go back to the car wash again. Now we had to make the best possible album and it wasn't important who did what, as long as the result was the very best we could achieve. And of course I was the one who should do it. I don't think the others really understood what I meant, but at least I could manage the situation the way I wanted. The result was 8 million selling double-sided singles in a row and 6 albums, all of which went platinum, and Melody Maker had us as the best band in the world. That was after the Beatles split, but still. And I was the one who had created all this. Despite that, I don't think they understood what I was talking about. They were obsessed with the idea of more control and more influence. So finally the bomb exploded and we never worked together again.